the GFA Hopper is a fly that I used fly fishing the Yakima River. So we're using 70 Denier Hopper Yellow UTC thread, and we are wrapping just behind the eye. Snip your tag end, and begin wrapping down the hook shank and then back up. Alright, now grab 3 strands of Peacock Hurl, and make sure that they're nice quality Peacock Hurls, and begin wrapping them onto your hook shank. I like to pull the ends just to make them nice and neat, and then wrap back up. Now I almost kind of twist my hurls so then they kind of stay together, and then once again wrap back up to the eye. And this is kind of a slow process because you have to make sure that you don't break those delicate hurls. Now I'm gonna tie those off and pull them free. So make sure you're not too aggressive though, because you can break those hurls pretty easily. Even though it looks like I struggle, because I did. It took me a little bit to get that, but once you get it, it looked pretty flush. And you can see there's still a little bit room left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some black rabbit hair dubbing, and it almost makes like a transition from the body to head. It almost looks like a neck. So I'm going to put some on there, just a very small dubbing noodle, just enough to wrap a little bit, and wrap all the way up to the eye. Take a couple wraps in front just to make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. And I'm using tan 2mm foam, and depending on the hook, you can almost eyeball how much you're going to need. And I like to round the butt end. It just makes it look better and more professional. So begin wrapping it down, and I like to do 3 or 4 segments. So it's all personal preference though. Now I'm taking white hair, and I'm only taking a small clump, just enough to form a wing, and I'm placing them in my hair stacker. Also pull off any of the butt ends, or the small under first. Then I'm going to place them in my hair stacker. After you place them in your hair stacker, you can just give it a couple taps just to make sure that the hairs are all aligned. And this is another personal preference. You don't have to hair stack it. I just think it looks a little bit neater. Now I'm going to transfer them into my hand, pull out any long strips, and I'm going to measure it so then it goes just a tiny bit past that that section. Once you tie it in, they'll flare out and make them look a little bit longer. So it looks like you're just tying it below the butt, but once you tie it in, it'll go longer. So anyways, took a wrap, tie it all down, and only 2 or 3 wraps should do. You don't want to make too big of a thing, or too big of a spot and make it show on the underbody, but that's okay. If you do, you can just put dubbing over it. I didn't, because I only needed a couple wraps. Anyways, now fold over that extra bit of foam, and take just a couple wraps to make sure it's seated and not going to spin. Now, once it's ready, we're going to snip that little end, the end bit. And you don't want to snip too much off. You want some of it there, but just enough so it doesn't look all like a big thing. Now we're going to take some yellow 2mm foam and just a really, really small strip, just to to make it pop out so you can see your fly a little bit better. And just gonna just wrap it in just a tiny bit, and then just trim it close. This is another personal preference, but you can see the fly way better with it on. I'm using rubber legs. Like it's almost like a dark green, brown, orange. And I really like those legs for hopper patterns. So I'm taking one strand and folding it over, and then tying it down. Once as you have tied it down, you can pull them down to each side. And once you pull them down to each side, you can snip that loop. And this trick really helps so you don't use as much rubber legs material. Now we're just going to use some head cement to make sure that everything stays in place, because you don't want to take too much wraps, but if you don't take enough wraps, everything's just going to fall out of place. But this head cement will make sure that you can use minimal wraps and still have it secure. Whip finish, 3 or 4 turn whip finish, and you should be basically done here. Just snip those rubber legs, put them to how you like. I like to have the back legs longer than the front legs, not by much, but a noticeable amount. So, see they're all kind of even. I like to snip it, pull back a little bit, and basically give it a makeover. So, after all that, you're basically done. But I like to fish this fly from currents, like fast currents, into pools. There's not really fast currents or anything, I fish this fly really well closer to the middle of like a river, and you don't want to strip it. It's not like a popper. It's like let it drift down. Sometimes closer to the end, when it starts to drag with your line, that sometimes will spark a fish to hit. So that's basically it. CDC Hopper. And I really like this fly for dries, or I really like this fly for trout. Thank you for watching.